What's up, everybody? It's Bishoy Habib, the realest real estate attorney out there. And today we're going to talk about the NAR proposed settlement. Now, you've probably already heard something about the lawsuits against NAR since it has the potential to shake up the entire $2.5 trillion residential real estate industry in America. So I'm going to give you some background, point out some important things, and then I'll give you my initial reactions to everything. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, as I mentioned, my name is Bishoy Habib, and I'm the founder and managing partner at Levacy Legal, a law firm focused on real estate, business, and estate planning in Florida. I'm also the broker at Capstar Real Estate, which is a hybrid model real estate brokerage also based in Florida. So, this news is especially relevant to both my law firm and my real estate brokerage. So, I wanted to share my initial thoughts on everything. Let's dive into it. The National Association of Realtors, or NAR for short, is one of the largest and most powerful trade groups in the country, with a membership of over 1 million realtors. They had something like $330 million in revenue a couple years ago. By way of background, NAR had been facing major antitrust liability since a Kansas City jury delivered a $1.8 billion verdict against them in October of 2023. The jury found that industry rules for how buyers' agents were paid were keeping commission rates artificially high. There was a bunch of copycat lawsuits filed against NAR all over the country, where home sellers argued that the current structure, whereby sellers state on the MLS the commission payable to the buyer's agent, harms competition and leads to higher prices. Well, last week, NAR agreed to pay $418 million to resolve all claims against the group by home sellers related to the commissions. But it's not the dollar amount that has everyone talking. The proposed settlement could represent a paradigm shift in the industry and its entire business model. It has the potential to shake up a system that has been in place for generations, particularly in relation to MLS and compensation structures. One of the most significant changes is the prohibition of buyer's agent compensation offers on the MLS, which is set to take effect in July of 2024. As part of the settlement, NAR said that agents who list a home for sale on MLS will no longer be allowed to offer a buyer's commission on there. Now, that's quite the difference from how this was before, where you had to list out the buyer's agent's compensation, even though they had lowered that to $1 or $0 recently. This is a complete 180 from what used to happen. Now, let's be clear here. This doesn't mean that there is not going to be sellers paying buyers commissions, right? That's not what this is saying. This just says it has to be negotiated privately. It cannot be listed on the MLS. More on that in a second. The second major thing from this proposed settlement is that NAR also agreed to require MLS participants working with home buyers to enter into written representation agreements with those buyers. This would also start in July of 2024, and the agreements between the buyers and the buyer's agents would presumably include the compensation from the buyer to the agent and the responsibility of the agent, among other things. So basically, you never really had a buyer's agent agreement before. Now you have to, moving forward, starting in July. So, and we'll dive into the repercussions of that as well. Now, the way that I see that playing out would be something along the lines of, let's say I'm a buyer's agent and you're the buyer, and we agree, if you find me a house within these parameters, you, the buyer, are going to pay me 3% commission. However, if we can negotiate the seller to pay some or all of that, you're off the hook for whatever they pay. So let's say we find a property you like and we're negotiating with the seller. We say to the seller, hey, you got to pay the 3% buyer's agent commission. Seller says, I'm not going to pay 3%. I'll pay 2%. All right. So now the seller at closing, seller pays 2%. The buyer then would be on the hook for the 1% difference. Buyer's agent gets a 3%. And so that's kind of the way that would play out in my mind. Now, there's a couple things I want to point out, including some myths, some headlines that are scaring people, kind of clarify those, and then give you my initial thoughts on everything. All right. First and foremost, most important thing about this, it's all a proposed settlement. the court still has to approve it, and that's expected to take several months. There's no reason to believe it won't get approved, but it's never done until it's done. The second thing, this whole proposed settlement is kind of being marketed as commissions are being slashed, and that's just simply not the case. This is simply a decoupling of the buyer's agent commission and the seller's agent commission. Okay. All we're doing here is splitting the fees. They're being negotiated separately and potentially they're being paid separately. It's not in any way meant to imply that commissions will be lower. Could that be a side effect of this? It could. Who knows? But that's not the intent. The intent is just to basically give the buyers more leeway in terms of how much to pay, how to negotiate it, everything like that. Okay. Um, Also important to note, this is not the death of sellers compensating buyers' agents. As I just mentioned, that's still perfectly legal. It just has to be privately negotiated between the seller and the buyer. It's not something that the seller can predetermine and list in the MLS. Okay, that's the key distinction. Um, Another thing I want to point out, this doesn't affect the seller's ability to put concessions on the MLS listing. So, for example, sellers can still say, on the MLS listing, seller to pay a portion of buyer's closing costs, seller to pay $10,000 or 1% towards closing costs. That's still legal. The only thing this impacts is the ability to, on the MLS, say that seller is paying a fixed amount towards the buyer's agent. That's it. Um, Kind of a side note here, the settlement does not cover some of the largest brokerages in the country, such as Compass, EXP, and Redfin, those doing over $2 billion in sales. They'll still have an opportunity to settle, but that's going to be based on a particular formula, which I won't bore you with the details here. So my initial thoughts, there's a lot to unpack here. Okay. You're dealing with the housing industry, the real estate sector is 20% of the gross domestic product or GDP of the United States of America, $2.5 trillion. NAR, a million plus members, $330 million in revenue, one of the most powerful trade organizations in the world. Real estate touches most people in this country in some way or another, whether you're just a home buyer, whether you're an investor, whether you're a professional. This is a very complex issue. This is a national issue. This is a huge economic issue. So it's very nuanced. It's very complex. And there's nobody that's going to be able to predict how this is going to play out. So it's all still too early to tell. These are just kind of my initial thoughts. Now, as far as agents go, I was reading a study recently, even though we're in this day and age where everybody's a quasi agent and everybody's on Zillow and everybody gets alerts at the same time as the agents when there's a price drop or a new listing or, pending, whatever the case may be. So despite all that, in this day and age, buyers actually still want more advice from their agents than ever before. In this day and age, listing agents are skeptical that buyers who don't come with their agents to showings are serious and don't take their offers as serious. So, I'm going to talk about Florida because that's where I'm from. That's, where I work. And also because we're the number one state where there's real estate agents in the whole country. As a matter of fact, we have 225,000 real estate agents in the state of Florida. That was as of January of 2024. Okay. And I think agents get a bad rep, and I'm going to give you my theory as to why and how I think that's going to affect all this. So COVID happened 2020, crazy times for everyone. Florida real estate market really just, went to levels nobody had ever seen or expected. And so when you have 1,100 people net migrating into Florida every day, for an extended period of time, you're going to get a large increase in demand for real estate. You're going to get a large increase in people getting into the real estate market. And that's exactly what happened. We had hairdressers, nurses, teachers, firefighters, you name it, getting into real estate as agents, part-time agents, and doing their jobs full-time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's awesome. However, those people were not necessarily equipped to help out, to, to have the experience, to have the training, to really help someone, especially a random buyer or seller. It's one thing if it's your mom, dad, sibling, best friend, but to help the public at large, you need a certain amount of training experience to do that, and professionalism. And I think that was lacking with a lot of the new agents because it was kind of a gold rush. I think that hurt the reputation of agents. I think people got a bad taste in their mouth because the seasoned, experienced professional agents who actually did this and had the knowledge and were able to provide a ton of value, they were kind of, still doing their thing, but there was a whole slew of new agents who were not. And so agents got a bad rep. People started wondering, how much do we really need agents? And I wanted to clear up that agents still have a tremendous amount of value. There's things you can't find online. You can't find, what pockets of a neighborhood, are up and coming or are hot or you should stay away from. You cannot find out, the trends in that industry, that trends in that neighborhood from Google or Chat GPT or Zillow. You don't know who's moving in, who's moving out, what kind of employers are in the area, So those are all things. I mean, and that's just a baseline of some of the value that the agent offers in addition to all the other services that they provide. So, my thought is like buyers might feel empowered right now to say, hey, we want to get away from this. We're going to just do this ourselves. And I think the pendulum may swing to kind of buyer empowerment. And then they may realize, wait a minute, this isn't fun. This isn't easy. We don't like doing this. We want to pay someone to do it. Right. And we kind of get back here. That's just a thought. I think that's a possible solution here. But time will tell. Right. Another thing to point out, listing agents will still be able to control their compensation much better than buyer's agents. This has kind of historically been the case, but it's more so the case now. If I'm a listing agent, which means I'm selling the property, and I have a listing agreement with you as the seller, I know I'm getting 3%, right? No matter what happens if I sell the property. So buyer's agents, you're walking in, you'll have that agreement. But as a listing agent, you're still more confident because you have the property, right? I think NAR membership is going to decrease significantly, and I think many agents are going to exit the industry. This just goes hand in hand with what I just discussed. Maybe there's older agents who are on their way out anyways, and they don't want to deal with all this. Maybe there's agents who haven't closed a deal in a year or two, and they just have their license, and it's just not worth it for them anymore. So I think you'll see an exodus of agents, and as well as NAR members. So let's talk about this buyer's agreement with the agent. So this is going to be required moving forward, right? I think this is going to represent an opportunity in a couple different ways. So first of all, the biggest complaint that I hear, and I've been working with agents for a long time. I've been an agent since I was 18, but I've been, doing closings and representing agents and brokerages for a long time, even before I had my own. The number one complaint I hear is about buyers wasting an agent's time. That's the biggest thing. I've had agents who have shown 25 properties to a buyer, haven't closed the deal. Those buyers went ghost on them. So it's a real frustrating thing. I think this agreement is going to mitigate some of that. It's not going to eliminate it because I don't think that's possible, but I think it's going to mitigate it. And so I think when a buyer puts pen to paper and it signs a legally binding agreement, which they never had to do before, saying, I'm going to pay you 3% as long as you find the property that I like within my parameters, that's real. Like, that's a real thing. People aren't going to do that, I think, unless they're really ready. As I said, people could still sign and no show or ghost or whatever. You can't eliminate that completely, but I think this helps. And I think that works in the buyer's agent's interest. It's also going to potentially usher in this whole new era of, kind of creative structuring of how to pay commissions, right? And so I've heard agents that are billing at an hourly rate. I've heard agents that are doing a flat fee, $10,000, regardless of the purchase price, right? With that comes the flip side. I'm not giving you a full spectrum of services as a buyer's agent. Maybe I'm helping you find the property and helping you negotiate the contract, and then you're on your own, or vice versa. Maybe you find the property, I help you negotiate the contract, and I take it through, right? And I think kind of a tiered system with different levels of services being offered, I think that could be something. And you know, listen, I mean, that may not sound great today, but at the end of the day, if you as a buyer's agent are working 30% as hard and making 30% of the commission, you know, you're just going to have to find more clients, but you'll have more time to do that, right? And so I think the only downside would be is if you were working 100% as hard and making 30% of the commission, right? That would be a losing situation. I don't think that's going to be the case here. Um, I also think that this offers one more item to negotiate when entering into a contract or even after you're under contract. And I think that is great for agents. And the reason is the more opportunities you have to show your value, the more complex the negotiations are, the more moving parts there are. I think that's better for agents because that's where you show your worth. That's when a buyer says, wow, I couldn't have done this without you. Wow, I really appreciate you stepping in and negotiating this or that for me. And I think ultimately that is one more example of something that an agent could show value with. Um, I think all in all, this could lead to a more efficient marketplace. Pretty much everything I've just listed in the last couple minutes ultimately equals more efficiency. Efficiency could be buyers not paying for a service they don't need. Efficiency could be agents not providing a service they're not getting paid for. Efficiency could be a seller not paying a buyer's agent fees if they don't want to. Efficiency could mean so many different things in this scenario. And I think ultimately it becomes a more efficient marketplace. Now, um, this is not intended to be like a comprehensive, you know, this is everything about the new proposed settlement. I think it's going to be a wait and see game, even if this does get approved. I think there's still we have to wait to see how the market dictates, you know, what happens, how the market reacts, how buyers react, how sellers react. I think a lot of it also will be based on market conditions. So in a hot market, we may not see as much compensation. In a cold market, we will. And that's just always how it's been anyways. I know a lot of agents are worried. A lot of agents are upset. A lot of agents are concerned. Um, I would say my final thought is with change comes opportunity, truly. I mean, those who adapt the quickest are the ones that are going to do the best, the ones that are going to succeed. Change is inevitable. This is it. It's happening. So, you know, I think the agents that are stuck in the old ways and want to complain about how it used to be in the old days, I don't think that's going to serve them well. I think the agents who adjust to the new business model, those are the ones who are going to do very well. So, you know, I think time will tell. I think it's interesting times. It's exciting times if you look at the glass half full like I do. We'll see where this goes. You know, stay tuned and I'll continue to give you guys updates as they come along. Thank you so much for listening.